Hello everyone. Welcome to this session on MongoDB to Azure DocumentDB migrations. I'm Sandeep Nair, and in this session, I'll share my learnings from managing migrations for big as well as small workloads. Before we get started with migrations, let's understand why Azure DocumentDB. DocumentDB is an open source MongoDB compatible document database, and Azure DocumentDB is the PaaS offering for it on Azure. Let's look at some reasons why you would prefer Azure DocumentDB. Since it's a fully managed offering, you can concentrate on your app instead of management and admin activity. Since a document DB can have up to 32 terabytes disk, sharding becomes an optional topic and only used in very high traffic scenarios. 99.95% reliability gives you peace of mind. Entra ID and CMK support gives you enterprise security compliance. And then you have 50% cheaper, 35 days free backup, and automatic instant scaling. This would save you a lot of cost. Since it's built for the AI workloads, it has got industry-leading disk ANN algorithm for vector search and hybrid and full text search. So these are some interesting things about DocumentDB. Now let's get into migration. So when we talk about migration, typically people focus on the data migration piece, which is step 4 in the graphic that you see, but there are some steps before and after. So let's go through that. The step number 1 is assessment. We want to know what your current source looks like. What is the version? How many databases? How many collection? How many indexes? What is the size of these collections, etc. Next is prepare. We need to look at the data that we collected and say, okay, if this is the data that we need to migrate, how would we migrate it? Do some trial runs, figure out how much storage does it take, because storage will differ from source to destination. Do some performance tests, identify all those metrics so that you can decide for the next step. Next step is refine. In this, we take the input from the assessment, the learnings from the prepare, and say, okay, let's create the schema, let's create the shards, let's create the indexes. If there are some changes to indexes, let's make those changes. So you define all your schema here. And then comes the data migration. Here you can use an offline or an online migration. Remember, if you're using an online migration, you need change stream to be enabled on the source. Your op log should be capable of storing the changes while the offline migration is running. Once the migration is done, we go into the validation stage. We validate all data is copied correctly and completely. And finally, once you do the cutover, and that's when you get the green signal and say this is good to go and move forward. So remember, data migration, it doesn't mean just data migration. There are multiple steps involved and each step is important. So first thing, assessment. How can we do an assessment? We have an automated tool built into VS Code called the Azure DocumentDB migration extension, and it has got an assessment option. What does it do? It gives you all the information about licensing, user roles, database details, collection, indexes, and all that. Let's quickly see it in action. So here I have my extension loaded, and I have added a connection to my connections dialog, and I'm going to now start. I will right click on this option and start the assessment. On the commands palette, I select pre-migration assessment for Azure DocumentDB, and I'll click on run validation. I'll give it a name for the assessment and then hit start assessment. The tool will take a few minutes to do the assessment and finally give you a report to download. It's an HTML format, so you can download it, share with all your stakeholders, and make sure that they are in agreement with the data. So that's the assessment. This gives you all this insight very simply through the assessment extension wizard. Let's look at next schema migration. So now you have the assessment and you want to define your schema. This is the refine step. Now, what do you do here? We have a schema migration script which will automatically read the source schema and copy the schema to the destination. You may also want to customize some indexes if you want to. A good practice is always to create the indexes before the data copy activities so that you have very clear timelines on how much time the migration is going to take. Sharding is optional. You may want to shard when you have some workload which has got very high transactions per second. So you want to distribute the workload across multiple nodes. Uh, your collection size is very large. And remember, I said 32 terabytes is the size that we support today, and we may support bigger nodes later. So, but if your data doesn't fit into a single node, you may want to shard it. Remember, if your source is already sharded, you may want to check if all the IDs are unique across shard keys. Because if they are not, when migrating, they will cross duplicate IDs and the migration will fail. So take care of this and see if your source already is a sharded collection. You may also decide to, instead of sharding, co-locate the collection, which basically means I have got 5 nodes. I can distribute my collections across these 5 nodes instead of sharding the nodes. So I may say, okay, I will store some data on node 1, some data on node 2, and some data on node 3, and that way. So you can manually decide which node, which collections will reside on which node, and that's called distribution. Remember, when you do the distribution, collections that are referencing each other should be together. I mean, collections which use lookup, graph lookup, union with should always be in the same node so that you get good performance. Now coming to the migration tools. Depending on from where you are coming, we have different tools. So if you are coming from Azure Cosmos DB, MongoDB RU, we have a migration of setting migration option available in the Azure portal. It's a simple wizard. Go to process the no, just put the values and you will be able to migrate to document. If you're coming from MongoDB, VM, and Atlas cluster or AWS DocumentDB, we have multiple options. We have the VS Code extension that I spoke about earlier. We have a web app, which is a self-hosted tool, and we have the old dump and restore, which can be used for offline migration. I will be talking about VS Code extension and web app during my presentation. So let's first look at the VS Code extension. Uh, the benefits of using the VS Code extension are there is zero cost. The infrastructure, you don't have to set up any infrastructure. It's very easy to learn. Um, the data transfer is done on the DMS servers or database migration service of Azure. So you don't use your local bandwidth, you don't use your local resources. You can do high speed migrations on the cloud, but all done through VS Code. It supports online and offline migrations. It is compatible with private and public endpoints, and you get real-time migration status. The good thing, it supports migration Mongo 3.4 onwards, so you can actually migrate very old versions also. Let's see the migration through VS Code in action now. So we have a source here. So I have created a source collection. I'm using the sample restaurants here. And inside the sample restaurants database, I have a test collection. And I have created a single document which has got, and in the single document, there is a value called before migration. Let's see what I do to this how do I migrate this. So I have the document now. I'm going to show you the target. Here I have the same collection created in my target, but it is empty. So now I will proceed with the migration. So I again right click on the connection on the source. I select data migration. I select migration to Azure Cosmos DB and migrate to Azure DocumentDB. I am presented with a 6-step wizard. I give it a job name. I select whether I want to do offline or online. Offline basically means it's a snapshot. Online basically means it's a snapshot plus a CDC, so that any change happening on the source while the migration was running will also be copied over to the destination. I'm going to use public and connectivity. I can also use private if you want. Next, I am supposed to select the target. So it will ask me to provide the subscription, resource group, account name, and the connection string. Next, I am asked to provide the data migration service. So you have to create a data migration service per uh, region. If you have already created a DMS, you can use it. If you have not, then you can click on the create DMS button to create one. Next is the next configure connectivity. Because we are going to be connecting to the source and the destination, you need to enable the IP on the source and the destination firewall. Remember, configure connectivity will be a different screen if you're using private endpoint. I'm going to migrate the sample restaurants. So I can see that there are 4 collections here. I'm going to select all 4 of them. And here you will see that for the one collection, the test collection, it says override if existing because that collection exists on the destination. The rest of the collections do not. I do not want to override the collection. So let me change it to no. I click on next and I get a summary of all the information that I have fed in. I can validate this. If I want, I can go back using the edit details button, but I'm good. So I click on start migration. As soon as the migration job is created, the tool will automatically transition you to showing the migration job in the view existing migration jobs screen, and you will see the status here in real time. So here is the my migration that I created. It is in the provisioning state. We provision a VM for you to do the migration in real time. So it takes about 5 minutes for the migration to start. In this video, I'm going to skip some minutes and then take you to the time when the migration has already completed. So here I'm at the 6th minute and my offline migration is completed and I can see that the documents have been copied. Since the documents have been copied, let's go to the destination and see if actually the documents have reached there. Yep, I can see my document and I can see the document has got a value before migration. Let's also go and see if the other collections are there. Yeah, I go to the collection and I can see all the collections there. Now remember the value for my document that got copied is before migration. I want to show you what do you mean by online migration. The tool is continuously syncing the source and the destination. So I am going to the source and I'm going to edit my document and I'm going to change before migration to after migration. I hit save, and within a minute or two, the same document would now reflect on my destination. Remember, the status on this tool will be a little delayed, whereas the actual copy will happen faster. So let me go to the destination and refresh. And yes, I can see my after migration, which basically means any change happening to the source is getting copied to the destination. Now that all my changes are copied, I can click on cutover, initialize cutover, and stop the migration. So that's a very quick demo of how you would do an online migration using the VS Code. Let's move next and look at the architecture or the connectivity piece of how this happens. So the public connectivity is the most simplest out of the lot. The DMS uses a public VNet where we deploy a worker node for each job. The worker node interacts with the internet using a NAT gateway, which has got a public IP. That's the public IP you saw during the demo. And then if it basically talks to your source, which could be on Azure or somewhere else, and to your target document DB over the internet using the public endpoints. So as long as your public endpoints are reachable from this NAT gateway, everything should be good. Let's move on to the more secure way of migration. In this case, your source and your destination are within Azure, but can only be accessed through a private endpoint. So you would already have a private endpoint to a VNet from your source. You will also have to set up a public and private endpoint from your document DB to a VNet. Again, these two VNets can be same or different. So we are taking the complex scenario where the source and the target are different VNets, but they can be on the same VNet too. And what you do is you provide the DMS permissions to do VNet peering. So what the DMS would do is adjust at the time of the running the job, it would create a new VNet. It would deploy the worker nodes within the VNet, and it would set up VNet peering between the DMS VNet and source and DMS VNet and target. And once the migration job is complete, it will delete this VNet and the peering will also be removed. So that way, the migration happens privately without any connection going to the internet. Let's also see a variant of the same, in which case the source is actually not on Azure. It could be on premise, it could be on other cloud like is AWS, GCP, or some other cloud. In this case, the difference is that your source is connected to the gateway VNet through some VPN tool that you have. Again, depends on your choice. your settings, but except for that, the stuff remains the same. So essentially, when you set connect the DMS for private connectivity, you are doing using VNet peering to the source and the destination to establish connectivity. So now that we have understood the connectivity, let's look at the next migration tool that we have. This is called the web app based migration tool. So the difference between the two is that this is a customer hosted solution. So we give you a GitHub repo, which has got the code, you clone it and you follow the steps that are provided in the repo and you deploy the solution inside your subscription, inside your VNet. It supports private, public, online, offline, and it has some other features like you can filter the data and not migrate everything. You can rename the collections if you want during the migration, and it is an open source tool, so you can customize the code. It's written in C sharp, so if you have C sharp skills, you can always deploy, customize it, and deploy it uh, the way you want it. Let's also look at a small demo of the web app in action now. And remember that you can download the web app from AKMS MongoDB web app. So here is my web app, and this is the GitHub repo I spoke about. There is a folder for ACA where you will find the steps for downloading the ACA deployment. The web app folder has got the steps for deploying it as an Azure web app, and on-premise has got it as steps as for deploying it on IaaS. So you can basically the application is a Docker application, so you can deploy it in on any server which supports Docker. So once you have done the clone the repo and follow the instructions, then you will see the the once the application is deployed, you will see something like this. This is the deployed solution. Here I'm going to create again going to do the same thing. Let's go to the source. Um, I have deleted the document. So the documents are missing. I'm going to create a new job. I provide the name for the migration. I'm going to copy the source and target collection string. I'm going to give the collections to migrate, and I'm going to select online, and I'm going to I can use append mode, skip index, basically if I want to overwrite or not overwrite, etc. So you have a lot of options here. You can explore those. And basically, these are the default settings that you have to provide and click on OK to get started. So in this tool, since it is deployed for you, it is pre-deployed, it is instantaneous, there is no provisioning time. You would see the status happening in real time. You can see what the tool is doing in the log section, and you will see the migration happening in real time in front of you. So here we can see that it's starting to do the migration. It will do the download, and then it will do the upload. So yeah, you can see some downloads have completed and uploads have also completed. Very soon you will see the success of the upload. Okay. So now that the downloads and uploads are complete, you can see the cutover button is enabled, which basically means the offline part is complete and it is now doing a CDC or it's trying to learn, it is comparing the source to the destination and doing a sync. Again, same thing, the document has now been copied. The value was before migration. Let's now go to the source and make an edit and see what happens. I again make the change before migration to after migration. I also will create a new document and see what happens to that. Okay, I have done the two changes. I have got the two the updated document and the new document. I can see on the web app that it's already detected a change. You can see it in the monitor that it detected a change and it has processed it. Let's now switch to the target and see if that change is reflected. Yep, I can see that the documents are copied and updated. Let's Now here, similar to the other job, I can do a cutover, but here I can also do a pause. And once I pause a collection, I can even update the collection, which basically means I can add or remove collections. So once I do the pause resume, I can do the cutover. Similar to the same to the VS Code. Once you do the cutover, the migration is stopped and the sync is broken. So that's the web app in action. Now, uh, let's look at some best practices. So I gave the demo real quick. So I want to spend some time here on what are the best practices and what you should do. So we want to reduce failures. So what you should use encoded password because special characters can sometimes cause problems. Always run the assessment, identify your potential challenges so that you know what you are migrating. Practice is critical. Uh, every workload, every database may behave differently. So you need to know the peculiar behavior. So do practice and make sure that you don't wait for the last minute. Sizing is critical. Um, the data storage size on the source and the storage size on the destination can be different because of the different compression algorithms that we have. So do some trial runs or a small data set, extrapolate that numbers, and that would give you your clear numbers on what should be the compute tier, what should be the storage tier, how many shards should we use, etc. While doing that, please use representative samples, which basically means the document count should be similar, the size of the document should be similar, the structure of the document should be similar, the indexes should be similar, the sharding should be similar. Because many times people use their test data and do the test runs, and when they come to production, the real data is very different, and they see vast differences between what they had tried and what they are going to get. Always, like I said, always decide on the storage volume based on your trials, not based on estimates. Uh, for optimizing on speed, migrate within the same region. You can scale to M200 during the migration and scale down after the migration. So you can always scale between M40 and M200. Uh, but yeah, so you can always scale for the during the migration and then come back to up to M40 if required. Now coming to the disk, larger disk give you higher IOPS, so it makes sense to select the biggest disk possible. However, the disk size cannot be scaled down in DocumentDB. So when you select a disk, you need to select the optimum disk for your price and your speed. A smaller disk will reduce the IOPS. A very large disk will increase your cost. So select your disk carefully. Use SSD V2 wherever possible because they give you much more IOPS than SSD V1 disk. Carefully, the cutover is a very critical action. There is no rollback for after once you do a cutover. So what I mean by cutover is you should cut over when the traffic is lowest. So you have to plan and decide when is your traffic the lowest. Uh, just before cutover, you need to make sure that all the writes to the source are stopped. Let the tool run for some time so that you have create all the changes that are there on the source and you copied those changes to the destination. If you do not wait, some changes that were left on the source will not be copied and you may have data loss. Validate the document count, compare the documents using a hash comparison script so that you are confident that everything on the source is now there on the destination. Uh, Once your validation is done, you are confident, then update the connection string in on all your apps and test your application for performance and functional issues. Again, do the performance test using reads only at this point. And once everything looks good and you're ready to cut over, you change the traffic, right traffic to the target and start your application. Remember, once you move the traffic to the destination, there is no going back, there is no rollback. So all the steps before this are very critical and will make sure that you do not have any challenges post migration. Before you go, I just want to again re-emphasize migrations if are only considered successful if they are seamless and eventless. So you need to have a buy-in from all the stakeholders. It could be your app team, data team, infra team, security, network, management, etc. You have to take their buy-in and then do the migration. Planning and trials are important to build your confidence. There are no shortcuts, unfortunately. Like I said in my previous slide, cutover is a critical thing. Know who is going to do it, when it's going to happen. Yeah, and otherwise you are going to increase your downtime. Uh, you some many customers have got multiple workloads talking to the database, and cutover has to be done at the same time. All cutovers have to be done at the same time. So ensure that you have doing a cutover for all the workloads together. If you are, some applications are writing still to the source and some applications to the target, to the destination, then there will be data inconsistencies. So do not do that. Make sure that all applications have changed and then only do the cutover process. Do not rush. Um, do your due diligence. Remember, there is no rollback. Uh, there, everything that I presented is also available on our docs. Go to AKMS MongoDB vCore migration options. And if you still need help, we are there to help you. Reach out to CDB migration support at Microsoft.com. Thank you. I hope you like my presentation. Uh, Goodbye.